Hello, thank you for joining this episode of Build by Humans. This is where we talk about the human side of things, what it takes to build products beyond just technology, the latest and greatest tools, but real people that use them and design them and make them usable by all of us. Today, we have our guest. John, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name's John Schulz. I've been in software development now since 2015. Before that, I had a career in restaurants and pivoted uh, after attending Dev Boot Camp in Chicago, which is a coding boot camp. Taught us Ruby on Rails and JavaScript and how to build web apps. And I've worked for a number of startups over the past 10, 11 years. Yeah, that's who I am right now. I'm currently managing a team of software engineers for a credit reporting agency. We do cash flow analytics, which is basically an alternative to your big three credit agencies. We do a little more personalized credit reporting.
So, my first question, you come from a restaurant industry. As far as it possibly can be from software development. No matter what you did in restaurants, it's all about service. And that's what we think. Restaurants are about good food, but it's more than good food, it's about service.
Hmm.
Software engineers specifically, and I've been in software industry myself for over 30 years. A lot of software engineers don't realize that they're in the service business. They like to sort of say, we're going to do this because we think we need to do this, not forgetting that they always have a customer. Even if it's in an internal software department, right? They have a customer, product, executives, whatever it is.
Hmm.
There's always a customer. So what's your experience coming from very service oriented to where
Yeah,
service is, iffy?
I mean, honestly, it's helped me to sort of carve a niche out in technology because I have the ability to sort of bridge that gap between the technology people and the business people, speak to them plainly about how the technology works, and then
Mhm.
communicate their crazy ideas to the engineers so that we can actually develop things. And it is one of the biggest differences, the biggest changes for me was recognizing that engineers often like to silo themselves into their code. They like to write code. They don't want to spend time dealing with people. They want to work with the machines that do just what they say. And so a lot of what I ended up teaching to my team and have taught to other teams that I've managed was the importance of knowing who you're building it for. Like, this is an example, your application returns an error message. That error message doesn't have any actionable information in it. It's nearly useless. It's just a brick wall. Every time I have had, as a software engineer, have had to build an integration to a third party, that was always the most frustrating part is, oh, the documentation is out of date, so it doesn't actually reflect what's going on with the API. And now I'm staring at it, the same error message no matter what I do. I have to wait until some support person gets around to my ticket to answer my question. And so it made me recognize right away that there was this disconnect between the way the technology works and the people behind it that are actually trying to utilize it, a lack of communication.
Yeah. So yeah, you get it. Like I said, I spent 35 years in software industry
Hmm.
and it started as a developer. I started actually in quality, then moved into development. And pretty quickly I figured out that's not what I really enjoyed. What I enjoyed was not saying managing, but it wasn't managing in terms of people management. It's solving
Hmm.
problems at a higher level. And when people ask me, what do you do? What business are you in? Like, what is your role? The title was one thing, but what is your role? And I always said it's business of software. My job is to make software a business unit. Again, most of my job was internal software development companies, right? Software
Hmm.
shops that produce the product. But the customer, right? There's always a customer, and we forget that.
Yeah.
I had an experience. I'm going through an experience right now. I bought Dell computer as my desktop a few months ago, and it's having a problem, a technical issue. It's basically doesn't wake up my monitor after it goes to sleep.
Hmm.
And I've tried, I'm a techie. So I've tried a different monitor, I've tried a different computer, and it's clearly this computer. This monitor works fine with another computer, another
Hmm.
monitor behaves exactly the same with this computer. So it's a computer. So I'm dealing with their tech support now for 2 months. And their response is the system does exactly what it's designed to do. We're looking at the logs and they show that system wakes up. And I'm like, I didn't buy your computer to look at the log. I bought your computer to have a
Yeah.
monitor on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is a disconnect, right? They don't
Hmm.
get it. They genuinely don't get it. But the system does what we expect it to do because we see the line in log files.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
That is often a point of disconnect that I think engineers often have when they're approaching a problem is they look
Yeah,
and they see, well, you passed these bad parameters. So of course you received this error that I expected you to see. Everything is behaving as expected. That is a feature, not a bug. And
it
when you
works
try
on
to
my
talk to
computer.
them, yeah. Like when you try to ask them what they think the person who reads that message thinks and how are they going to react to this information, they are often you get blank stares because they never thought about. They just knew they were supposed to return an error when that thing happened, and that is the end of it. That's where that was what the requirement said, so that is what they did,
Right.
and that's one of the places where I found sometimes the engineers feel I'm a little too much, but I've often found that that is the place where I've been valuable in the companies that I've worked for, was being able to explain to them in terms that they understand why it is better to communicate
Hmm.
more salient information to the end user. It's not always even an informative error message from a software developer who knows the
Hmm.
system becomes meaningless to the caller.
Right.
You need the message to reflect what did they do to take corrective action. If they made a mistake, tell them how to fix it. They can't fix it, tell them that. Tell them
Right.
this is out of your control. You need to wait for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there's, yeah.
So when we talk about service, it's also right. There's another aspect of it. Different cultures. So we're all remote. I run a company
Hmm.
that is service to hire remote software engineers from across multiple zones, mostly Latin America and Europe. And service is not always viewed the same way by different people, right? There's some countries, some locations are more service oriented. Some are like, oh, we do this. We shop for work. That's all. That's all we need. And here in the US, we're sort of used to our way of doing things. Is your team remote, local, international?
A little both. So when I started with Edge 2 years ago now, the team was mostly based out of Europe, a handful of Ukrainian software engineers that were spread
Mhm.
around the continent, with one person that was in Nashville, and then the sort of the core of the company based out of Chicago. But since then, we've hired a couple more couple staff engineers that are also based out of Chicago. I personally have put a lot of value behind getting the engineers in the room with a whiteboard and then locking them in
Right.
there until we solve the problem. There's no Zoom replacement for actual physical people in a place working together on a thing. I've tried all of the different tools and they don't actually
It's
do the thing.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something's missing every time. And
for
so,
sure. And I can tell you, right, even my company is 100% remote. Like
mhm,
every single person is remote. And we are used to doing things. And, we talk
mhm.
and we know how to communicate. I'm not talking about
Oh,
among
sure.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And still, there's just
Yeah.
something different when you get every once in a while. You don't have to do it every day, but
Mhm.
just, get in for half a day or a full day and just, brainstorm. A lot of those, it's sort of, hey, I have a question. We need to figure this out. That can be done over Zoom very easily.
Sure.
But let's just put everything away and think
Yeah. Yeah. And have a conversation. Honestly,
and have a conversation.
one of the things that I have found was most unexpected when I got into software were how many problems I solved when I was not in front of the computer. How
Hmm.
often I would be toiling away at some software problem, stuck with some bug or trying to integrate to a third party API. And it would be while I was eating dinner that the idea would occur to me, or I'm driving home from the office. Of course, you can't take notes while you're driving. And so I would have
Yeah.
to gotta remember the thing, gotta remember the thing. But it is during those times where your brain is not being actively pressed to do the work that
Hmm.
the solutions often manifest themselves. And so
Got it.
sometimes it's just going out for lunch with people and having that time to relax a little bit and unwind, be a little more casual, where you suddenly find inspiration for the solutions. And so it's the thing I miss the most about being in person all of the time. I'm
True.
in office one day a week now so that I can see people and have these kind of strategy meetings.
So what have you learned or how have you found out that works best? Given the reality, you're in office once a week, so and you probably not everybody is in office on the same day. So there may be some
Right.
people you don't see for a long time. Some people are
Hmm.
remote still, right? And could be
Yeah.
overseas, even not
Yeah.
overseas, but so
No,
what do you find? What works? How do you do this?
I think the most important thing is more communication. I think that's the people think that once you're remote, because you don't have all the distractions, you can get work done. But
Mhm.
getting work done isn't that's not the end goal. An individual going fast doesn't make the company go fast, doesn't make the team go fast. You need to clearly communicate what you're doing all of the time to everybody on the team. So that way, when you're about to make a silly mistake, someone else can jump in and be like, hey, bet you didn't know about this thing over here. And so it's really is just encouraging open communication, getting everybody to put their egos aside. That also has been very important. Sometimes you have to kind of beat it into people to convince them that they should not be precious about their code or their solution, but you need to here was my idea, tell me what's bad about it, instead of here's my idea, praise it now, tell me how great it is and then deploy it. Like I only want to hear why my idea was terrible, because then we'll eventually get to the great idea that I would never have had on my own.
You remind me. I was a VP of engineering for a fairly large company, and I had, I think, four, maybe five directors under me. And we just hired a new director, and it was like one of the first meetings he was there, and everybody else knows me, right? I've been there for a while. We worked together
Mhm.
for a while, and this new person, we come in, and I go, "Hey, this idea, what if we do this?" And the new guy, "Yep, yep, yeah, yeah, yeah." Yeah, yeah. And everybody else is like, you're crazy. This is not going to work. And here's why it's not going to work. And the new guy, nope, this is what we can do. We can do it this way. We can do it that way. And so the
Mhm.
meeting over, and I'm like, I'm irritated. And like, do you? And he was saying stuff that was obviously he couldn't not hear what other people were saying, and they were right, right? It's not okay. Then the meeting, the meeting ended. I walked out of there. And next day, one of the guys that I actually used to work with before, and I brought him over, he comes in and he starts laughing. So this new guy comes to me, well, that comes to him right after the meeting and goes, "What do you mean you argue with him?" He goes, "Yeah. So you can tell him he's wrong?" And this guy, Alex,
Yeah.
again, who knows me by that time for 5 years or
Mhm.
so, he goes, "Well, he already knows he's right. He doesn't need you to confirm that. He needs you to tell him he's wrong and why."
Yeah. I honestly,
Yeah.
it's, I think one of the most valuable things that you can get from your team is
Yeah.
the ability to speak plainly about what they truly think about the
Mhm.
situation. I mean, I'm sure I'm regarded as something of a troublemaker from time to time in my company because I operate that way all of the time, but
Mhm.
it is how you get to the best answers. It's how you come up with the best ideas. If people are afraid to voice their opinion, then you might as well micromanage everybody. You might as well just declare the way it should
Yeah.
be and let them execute and then fail because you couldn't come up with the perfect answer every single time, right?
Absolutely.
It's just not
Absolutely.
realistic. So yeah, it's
But it also takes very right approach to hiring because a lot of people
yeah.
don't want to take responsibility for their ideas. They don't want to
Mhm.
make decisions. They want to go, well, my boss told me to do this. I'll do it.
Yeah.
And if it
Yeah, yeah.
fails, well, I did what I was told.
Yeah, and I think that that's a safer position. There's a lot of software engineers that really feel comfortable in
Hmm.
the I was assigned this task. Here are the very simple, straightforward requirements. I will execute on those requirements. I will deliver exactly what you asked for, even if this is going to blow up your whole company. You asked for it, so I'm delivering it. And
Hmm.
it's a very comfortable, very feels like a very safe place because you're not causing trouble. You're not there's no confrontation involved in that. And it is, I think, something that as software engineers, it's important to confront that about yourself constantly. You need to be willing to take those risks and have that uncomfortable conversation. And if people get upset about the fact that you disagreed with them, then that's another
Yep.
conversation that needs to happen. Because while we're all on the same team going in the same direction, did you not want the good ideas?
And unfortunately, I've seen managers, bosses, leaders, probably not leaders, right? But they wanted to be leaders. They
Yeah.
failed at that part that would not take critique of their idea, right? They would not want that. There's
Mhm.
a famous case, I'm sure everybody knows. I was someone actually funny enough remotely involved in it. as an after the fact, when the person was in the hospital and he was supposed to have one of his legs amputated, and they cut off the wrong leg. And I mean, I don't. Few things could be worse than that, right?
Yeah.
And because now then you got to go and cut off the right
Go
one
take
or
the other one
the
also.
correct
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you can put it back, or the
Yeah.
other one you can put it back too late. And what was scary that when they investigated what happened, right? Let's get to the root cause of what happened. 3 people knew there was wrong, and they knew this, but they were
Yeah.
afraid to ask or afraid to question because their boss or somebody in power said that this is right, and the whole culture was you don't argue with the doctor, you don't
Hmm.
argue with the chief nurse, you don't argue with this, and this, and this. Like
Yeah.
the actual surgeon, the last person that knew was the nurse that stood in the surgical room and assisting the surgeon, assisting as in, whatever the nurse
Hmm.
does there. And she knew it was a wrong leg, but she's worked with this doctor before, and she had experience, witnessed, and had her own experience. If he's
Sure.
ever questioned about anything, he loses it. And she was like, I'm not asking this. He knows better. He's
Yeah.
a doctor.
I have heard a similar story, and it is part of our policy that if somebody says stop the deployment for any reason, we just stop.
Mhm.
It is not, there's no, you don't make them defend it in the heat of the moment. You just, okay, well, we're going to stop, look at this, figure out what's going on. Let's have a conversation around it, see what it is. It's honestly, there's a lot of industries that have started approaching their own work with a little more humility that I think
Yeah,
really helped the process. Pilots are a similar thing. Anybody who
right.
flies a plane and has done it for many, many years knows that they could just hop in the cockpit and go. Like they don't have to go through the checklist. They could do it all blindfolded. But they do the checklists every
Right.
single time, not
Mhm.
because they need it, but because by doing it, they ensure that they don't ever forget a step. And that is just useful behavior. That is something that
Yeah.
I've tried to adopt as far as our software engineering processes is have documented process so that there are these checks. And nowadays a lot of it gets automated through the CI pipeline, but
Right.
it is still a set of checks and balances. It is, did all the tests run successfully? Did your linter run successfully? Can the
Mhm.
system reach out and, the like networking is all set up correctly and can interact? The database is accessible. Like all these little checks that happen before the code gets deployed, that is there because it's good to always check those things. Even when you're sure it'll work, it's good to
Yeah.
have that process in place. It's, I mean, also it's code review and QA as part of that also, but yeah.
And I think we had, I started in software in 1992. It was all corporate, right? It was all like word startup didn't exist. The word
Yeah.
small
Yeah. Yeah.
company did, but startup didn't exist. So a lot of it was corporate. A lot of it was big. I still remember mainframes and minis and stuff. And in that world, open communication, open and honest communication did not exist, right?
Hmm.
I'm your boss. You're going to do what I tell you to because I said so. And I was very happy to see as years progressed and we moved to more both agile, and when I say agile, right, agile development processes, but also agile
Yeah.
thinking, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you don't have to have the right decision right away. We can just go and figure this out. The generation changed.
Mhm.
Younger people came in and they came out of schools, they came out of whatever, different industries. And to them, this is not authority just because it says boss on the door. The authority is somebody who actually can help them. And I
Right.
think that transition, I actually remember that very well. I remember the company I worked for, it's probably, but let's say 20 years ago or so, where I could feel that transition when all of a sudden this new
Mhm.
generation of people coming in and they're genuinely asking for an opinion as opposed to telling their employees what to do.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. Restaurants notoriously are led by very authoritative people. It is
Hmm.
historically anyway, I will say that there is often a you do it my way because I know better because I'm the manager. That's the end of the story. If you don't like it, they'll get rid of you and replace you with a new person. Always people looking for jobs at good restaurants. And when I got into software, because I learned software through Dev Bootcamp, who just taught agile is like, yeah, this is just the way you do it. There was
Hmm.
no question to us. We were just like, oh, this is just how you do it. Okay. And then here's maybe 4 or 5 years later into my second startup at this point, and I saw that there was a online Scrum for Software Developers certification that I'd stumbled across, and company was willing to pay me to go, to pay for the course and whatnot so that I could get this certification. And I was really doing it from the like, we're being agile and trying to do these things, but let me go learn the real process and how they do it.
Right.
What's the official, it's Scrum. Everybody knows that. And so the most interesting thing about it was, first of all, everything they said was obvious to me. I learned almost nothing in these courses, unfortunately, but the people that I was taking the course with could not imagine that we deploy code every day. Every day we release our product. New features out, push it. Let's go. Like that was every single time. That was just how it went. There was no quarterly releases and release notes and all of that. It was like, hey, we just deployed a thing this morning. Be aware. This is how it changed. This is how the UI changed or whatever. And they couldn't wrap their head around that. They're like, what happens if something goes wrong? Then you release a patch later that day. You just fix it. You don't wait. You're going to wait 3 months to fix your bug? Like that feels irresponsible. I would much rather know that it got fixed immediately as soon as you found out that there was a bug. But they were coming from that very corporate background and had not had any experience with Agile until this course. And I couldn't believe that I was like, in software, this authoritarianism just doesn't exist. Everybody, it's all flat and full of humility and vulnerability. But yeah, it still does exist. It's still out there.
Oh,
these
absolutely.
Giant corporations.
Before I started this company, my last job, I won't say the name to protect the innocent, but I got there and, I was hired to run an engineering department, and there's a large company, one of those Fortune 500s. And one of the jobs was to, hey, let's get this thing really agile. And I come in and during my interview process, and then when I started talking to some of the people who've been there for a long time, and well, we're agile. Said, okay, great. How often do you do releases? We do release every 2 weeks. I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking, okay, they are agile. Why these people are telling me come in and build agile? And then I learned they are doing releases every 2 weeks, but it's a 2-3 months process to get to that release. It's just staggered, right? So it's still requirements, development, testing, whatever it is, unit testing, and then it's released. Yeah. But it's a train that leaves the station every 2 weeks. And so I'm like, wait, that defeats the purpose of agile. Because agile is it's not about how often you do release. It's about how quickly I can get something in production. It still takes 8-12 weeks to get something into production. So don't pretend. Yeah. And they wouldn't get it. They genuinely didn't get it. They didn't say, how can you get something in production in 2 days?
Yeah. The waterfall project planning method is how all the physical things around us are built. And that's why I think people, they struggle with it, is they go, well, in construction, you need blueprints and you need approval and permits, and then you lay a foundation and then you build on top of that foundation. If that foundation's broken, you can't just swap it out for a new foundation.
Right.
That's not possible. But software doesn't work like that.
You can.
It's a completely different paradigm. Yeah, we just be like, oh, you know what? Today we're building it out of bricks. Nope, bricks are no good. Build it out of wood.
But you know what's funny? I just realized that. So I haven't had the conversation about Agile in a long time. Back in the day, but you need this for systems that are, life dependent, like something that's incredibly important. And everybody used NASA and I just realized, let's ask Musk about waterfall versus agile. And he's flying to space all the time, right? Or his company is. And I'm sure they're not doing they just don't. They okay, well, let's try it. Here, we build this little piece. Let's see if it flies. Oh, it didn't. Okay, well, we'll build another one.
Yeah, build another one. We'll make it a little bit different and try that. Oh, nope, that didn't work either. Okay, we'll try this one. That didn't work. This one kind of worked. And you just keep iterating. And it does work in software. It's not a perfect system. I don't know that there is such a thing as a perfect project management system. Honestly, the biggest challenge I have when interacting with the business side of our company or any company I have worked for is the question, how long is this going to take? You're asking us to invent things that don't exist. It's going to take some time. This is an estimate, but it's an estimate. That's the way this works. And if we can break your big idea up into little deliverables, those are easier to estimate.
Yeah, those estimates are more accurate. Right.
And that is what I see as the heart of Agile, is figuring out how to properly decompose a problem into small bites that are deliverable on a short time frame. That way you
Yeah.
can keep delivering little bits of functionality that add value every single time you deploy your code, but nobody is waiting 4 months for your feature to come out.
Right. Well,
Also, reviewing the code from 4 months of work is horrific. I've had to
yeah.
review those pull requests that touched 300 files. It's not even real. Like, I know that the review I gave was not good because
Yeah.
you're just exhausted by the end of it.
All right. Well, this was interesting. There's so many different aspects. We're in business of this remote hiring. And
Hmm.
we came up with a completely different model, especially when we started. It was completely different, meaning it was not something that people. We're an outsourcing company. We don't provide a service of software development. We provide a service of getting the right people and having them be part of your team. And I've always said one of the biggest components, it's not what they know, because you got to figure out if they're capable of learning something, but then what you need to know, do they fit in? Are they the right type of person? Is that the right fit for your organization? And that answer
Yeah.
is different for every single one. I would never, and I've done this, right? When I was a hiring manager and I worked for startups, very fast, very agile companies, I wouldn't hire anybody that spent 20 years of their career in a bank. Not because they're technically not capable. They are. I'm sure they are. It's not the culture they're in. They don't think in this idea, I'll do whatever it takes, and if it fails, it fails, because that's not how banks are.
Mm.
At the same time, if I never did, but if I run a bank and my responsibility was, banking software, banking systems, I probably wouldn't hire somebody from an agile company
Hmm. Oh
because you
yeah.
probably don't want to break it.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah, there'd at least be an assumption of some recklessness.
exactly. And so with us, a lot of this is we transformed it to international. And we see this, how you can really focus on filtering for the right type of a person, regardless of where they are. And people
Hmm.
assume, hey, people in this area, they're doing this, they're doing that. Yeah, technology different and different. I can talk for hours and hours and hours of a difference between hiring somebody from Europe versus somebody in Asia versus somebody in Latin America. And there's some things that pretty consistent,
Hmm.
but the type and personality, it's just the person, right? It's just who it is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're good at. That's what we do.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
It's been a pleasure.